Hello, everybody. Welcome. What a wonderful thing it is to be able to speak and hear and see and touch and taste and smell and feel and remember. Not just remember in the sense of bring to mind that which was previously experienced, thought, known, spoken, done, but to remember in the sense of to be brought back into communal awareness, unity, recognition, priority. One of my friends was quoting a very strange, somewhat megalomaniacal, yet brilliant man. A man I've never much trusted, to be entirely clear. But this doesn't mean I've often spoken about how I don't go to a restaurant and order everything on the menu. This is a quote that I caught from Eric Weinstein. Maybe he originated that comparison, that metaphor, that analogy, but it's a really good one. In any case, my friend was quoting Aleister Crowley. And he said, "I am divided for the sake of love." Okay? Think carefully about this matter. Because the existence of distinct beings and moments and situations and purposes my God. It's so funny what I heard someone saying right then. You know, imagine that we were all having exactly the same life, exactly the same experience, exactly the same responses, thoughts, concerns. And there was no diversity whatsoever in our humanity, or even in our location. Right? If you had a choice of just being one being, or being able to sort of divide yourself into five, let's say, and let's say you could not merely divide yourself into five distinct bodies, but each one of them could be unique so that they looked different, and perhaps 3 of them were women and 2 of them were men, or 2 of them were men and 2 of them were women and 1 was what we would call non-binary. People will say, no, I make all 5 of them non-binary. Okay, yeah, do whatever you like. But and then suppose further that you could send them into different times, right? So in the morning you divide into these 5 beings. And then suppose that further, okay, you could send them into different times, any time you wanted to live that day. And then at night they would come back together and become you. And all of their experiences, their unique experiences, would be shared, and you would be the position above their distinctions, right? You would be the moon position above the world of their experiences. They would all be you. You would forget your unity while you were separately in them in the daytime. But then in the evening, after supper, when they all come back together as you, the profundity of their unique experience would enrich your consciousness and your intelligence and your creativity and your playfulness and your concern and your memory. Now further imagine that you can split not merely into 5 different humans, but 5 of any kind of being, any organism, any being. One of you could be an angel, one a dragonfly, one a living world, one a star, one a human. Now you cannot be sure that this is not how it is, because we could be unaware of the divisions that happen just before we awaken and think that we are the same person we were yesterday and will be again tomorrow. We are easily deceived by structures in consciousness, expectations, senses, feelings. We are not only deceived by them, but we are easily deceived when we are deceived. Many of us have heard people say or write things that imply that all the beings are you. And when I speak of remembering as being re-unified, you should understand something about the etymology of the English word religion. Now, I don't know by heart its origins, and most etymologies trace origins back to Proto-Indo-European, which Amon Hillman says is a British conspiracy theory. I think that's a hilariously courageous and possibly brilliant thing to say. But this word religion, it means something it means, okay, do you understand the word ligament? Right? The ligament, if I understand this correctly, the ligaments in our, they sort of mean alignment. See, we have the same fragment, the same perhaps phoneme here. L-I-G-N, align. L-I-G, ligament, religion. This ligne, it's a strand that connects, like like the result of careful sewing, where two things become unified by the thread that interpenetrates them both in a pattern. And this re-lig, it means to reconnect. In Mary Shelley's unimaginably brilliant work, Frankenstein, my God, what was she, 19 or something when she wrote this? Jesus Christ, that woman. I suspect Pierce Burns Shelley's lover at the time, or around then. They were lovers. When she writes Frankenstein, she imagines the surgeon, the magus, the wizard, the sorcerer, robbing graves and assembling a man from the salvaged parts of a number of dead bodies. And with equal genius, Mel Brooks, with equal but divergent genius, Mel Brooks creates the film Young Frankenstein, which is maybe the greatest comedic film of my lifetime. I'm willing to nominate it. By the way, to nominate, basically means to name. This nomen, it comes from a fragment nym, like paronym, antonym, homonym. Anto being opposite, para being similar, homo being the same, I think, homonym. I might have that one wrong. It probably means like. Homo probably means likeness. Which I don't know if there's even a word paronym. This is a word I thought I invented, but we can never be sure we've invented a word. In fact, suppose our mind was never distinct. You didn't invent your the only thing, okay, you didn't invent English, with which, the thing you use to name and point at stuff in thought sometimes and speech. No, that's an inheritance from Homo sapiens, varietal, British Americanus or something, right? Like, there's a lineage there. So, although we might imagine our mind to be unique and personal, in fact, the stuff we use to forge it is communal. Right? So this religion idea, it means to sew back together that which had been disparate, right? Had been parted. And fascinatingly, I don't know if this is actually explored in Frankenstein, the book. I doubt I've ever read that book, actually. I've seen so many renditions of the story. One with Sting was particularly fascinating in its time. But perhaps because the, quote, monster was, I think in that version, female and beautiful. But you can imagine that, okay, think carefully about the metaphor in a new way, right? Let's cast this Frankensteinian monster in a little bit of a different light. So the light I'm going to shine on this monster, we're going to imagine that the limbs and the chunks of the limbs are each from different humans. And we could imagine them as some male, some female, etc. Imagine it however you wish, but if we sew together the limbs of dead bodies to produce a single human body form, anyway, a kind of a golem in a way, but then what we would have is something like the figure I presented at first. And it was not my intention to introduce Frankenstein later, in case that seems very artful of me. I can't really take credit for that because it's an accident of my wandering concerns. But if we weave together the limbs and organs of a number of dead people to produce a unified body, which we might then imagine to acquire a soul and become a mind, is that not similar to how we are? inside us, because how many dead people does it take to turn on how many dead people does it take to screw in the light bulb of a human soul? And one of the answers is all of them. But there are many answers, not just one. I have one photograph of my great-grandfather, aged approximately 19. His resemblance to my son is startling. My grandmother must have thought, how could it be how could it be? I was watching something very profound. There's a sprinkler spraying water into the sunlight, and it looked like a rain of stars. It looked like a disaster. Like the stars were falling in the daylight, like shooting stars of light, but then when it hit me, it was cold and wet, not bright and warm, like the light reflected in the water streaming across space from the sprinkler. There's another metaphor there, which is many droplets of being condensing to forge a human, or a blue jay, or a sage plant, or a mountain or tree. Many droplets. We are not like Frankenstein in that chunks of other beings, right, are sewn together to create us. It's much more elegant than that. The streams of human urgency and form, of dreaming and motivation, of hope, of desperation, of loss, of fear, of trial and tribulation, these are woven together. We come to birth to bring these myriad factors into communion and solution and resolution and recognition and remembering. How ironic then that the foundation of that process is lethal, in the sense of the river Lethe, in which we are said to be dipped between lives, thus forgetting all previous existences. This, of course, presumes that the human soul is singular, a fact I am inclined to both be willing to entertain, but also to doubt. Right? Suppose that all past lives are your life and all future lives are your life, but they are uniquely your life. So they are also uniquely the life of your mother, your neighbor, your enemy, the oak tree, the salmon, the bear. The elk, the school of fish, the coral reef, the plankton, the whale. And what you would find if you went looking for your previous life is not necessarily your previous life, though it might appear to be this. It might feel this way too. It is the nearest neighbor in the cloud of constellations of souls that lives are derived from. Yeah. You can see it as a single soul. You can see it as a constellation of soul-like elements, persisting and transforming, being added to and subtracted from and transformed and developed over time. Have at least these two views, and a third and a fourth that are more insightful than the remembering. So yes, we must undergo the great forgetting. And this happens to us in a single lifetime because we forget, most of us, what it was like to be a child, to be new once more, or perhaps for the first time, to the human form and to the possibilities of that form, its nervous system, its capacities for development, uniqueness, expression, play, resurrection of the ancestors who each contributed their genes and spirits and urgencies to our conception. It's funny, isn't it, that we call... Put my windscreen on here. It's quite breezy up here. We call the processes that originate thought the same word in English that we call the processes that originate an embryo. The same word in religion for the processes that originate a Messiah. Conception. Conception. Conception.
Tanto oggi non ha neanche senso vederlo se non vedi.
There's some Italians here. I wonder if they know that I'm Italian. Probably not. Though a look at my nose would tell the tale. You see, lineage and ligament, it binds us together. We recognize people of our own lineage. Yeah? Our own ethnicity, we have a special bond with those people. Now, truly we have a special bond with all beings, all organisms, all animals, all humans, all ethnicities. These are all our people. My people are people. All of the different peoples that are my people. So I want to present another figure. Imagine that when you fall asleep, you become all of the beings in all of time. The gods, the angels, the stars, the planets, the mountains, the forests, the animals, the plants, on all the worlds, you become all of them. You fall asleep, no longer are you singular. You are all the beings in all of time. You are the being who dwells in unity within what I will call the living waters, the feminine principle of pure, undifferentiated potential. As you fall asleep, your singularity disappears with you, and as you dream with the mind of all beings, but from a unique position in that hyperstructure. Your position, right? So your singularity still, your uniqueness, your individuality still has an effect. It's still part of the equation. Because you leap into the communal pool of all beings, being resurrected from your individuality, being religioned, reunified, Frankenstein. Yes. From the moment and place and history and position that you last held here. And so you enter the water of being and you become the entire water. And then you dream. And then when you awaken, you collapse back into apparently physically distinct selfness. The self word is really hilarious. I think of it as a snake elf. Snake elf. Of course, what elf means isn't merely that beautiful vision from Tolkien. It's something truly profound that vision points toward but does not capture. That was very strange. What just happened there? Is that a mouse? Because it sounded like a lizard. Possibly even the one creature I nearly never see here, a snake. Yes, so imagine that as you fall asleep, you become all beings from a unique position within the hyperstructure. And as you awaken, you are again apparently, but only apparently, distinct, individuated. And you forget having been all beings. It's very difficult to remember having been all the beings. With what mind will you remember that? Not the mind of your waking self. That's the mind that remembers you being distinct. Its memory is for distinction, unless that memory is trained to other purposes by ardent desire and practice and adoration. And if anything has gravitas in becoming that with which we entrust the training of memory. Do you know what this is?
Some sort of sage.
Yeah, it's sagebrush. It smells amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you rubbing it. I love to get that smell on my skin. It's flowering, this one. Yeah. If anything is worthy of sovereignty over the training of imagination, and memory, its reverence, its adoration, its wonder, its awe. If we use these to train our minds, our bodies, to practice in the aura of, we will transcend the traps of our mundanity. We will transcend them. And then like a climber who's achieved a high position, we can reach down and pull our children and our ancestors and the future of our people out of the traps they've lain so long encumbered by. To remember, to have senses. Take a moment and look at your body, at its form. Look at your hand. Open your hand and look at it on the inside. And see the astonishing profundity of that evolutionary development and inheritance that you've acquired as a human being. Flex your fingers. Move them in a sequence. Imagine caressing one whom you adore, or the keys of a piano, or sculpting an immortal form in stone or clay, or drawing with them, reaching into the soil, planting a tree. Imagine rescuing an injured animal with those hands. Imagine carefully, artfully setting the broken bone of an animal so that it will not perish or be crippled. Imagine writing something so beautiful that 1,000 souls in the future will be lifted from the poverty of their despair. Imagine your hand. And just as amazing your eye, and more primordial and brilliant your mouth and tongue and nose, your ears, with which you receive what I craft with my voice. But it is not my voice that is crafting this. It is the voices of my ancestors, having been unified by my ardent desire to fulfill their urgent dreams, their hopes, what they worked their entire lives in the hope of achieving, of transmitting to their children and their children's children. This is true religion. My voice is the local voice in time and the waking world, but it is not my voice. It does not belong to me. The least interesting aspect of my voice is when I darenize it. These machines, they're a plague. I despise them. One day there will be none here. I don't know if they are intrinsically a plague, and I benefit from their existence, just as you do. Without machines, I'd not be making these recordings, and we would be unacquainted, you and I. Our lineages would remain unlignate, ununified, not woven together. So it's not that they have no virtues, it's just that the humans have no idea what not to do with them, so they do every possible thing, and most of those things are horrific. Once I was shown, you can be shown 1,000 years of experience from 1 million beings over the span of 4 seconds. Your mind is capable of receiving transmissions of information that are nothing like the strangely slow, absurd chunking poverties we call communication. But once I was shown the histories of many living worlds at once, perhaps thousands of them, in an image that was fraught with emotion, and I saw how many of them perished before they had time to produce something as sophisticated as the wing of a bird or the eye of a human or an octopus or a whale or a hummingbird or a praying mantis or a dragonfly, even a housefly. Most worlds don't last long. They don't. There's a sort of a tempo. There's a number of variables, right? How old is the star? How young is the star? How stable is the star? How old is the planet? How young is the planet? How stable is it in its orbit? Does it encounter impactites? You have to have a lot of things go right for a living planet to prosper long and stably enough to produce eyes made of living water, hands, feet, wings, tentacles. Photophores, the coloring cells on the skins of cephalopods, whose name somewhat escapes me. All these adaptations, these are the imprimatur of a long and stable planet where physical memory is rich with innovation and sustained transmission of evolutionary adaptations. Our world is such a world, and as such is so precious. To call it priceless is an insult. The concept of price is meaningless without a world like this one. To remember. There are kinds of memory that are so profound that they unify the branches into which human knowledge has been divided, so that any thought you have is relevant in music, art, perspective, math, physics, dance, linguistics, semantics, archaeology, history, all these things. One, reunified in consciousness. These are the kinds of thoughts our minds were made for. How few of us will ever taste them. Perhaps we get a hint of them in certain kinds of experiences. Dreaming, more than a few hints in there. Some forms or modes of trance, some forms or modes of ecstasy, and perhaps some intoxicants incline us in this direction, particularly if our purposes in taking the intoxicants are thus inclined. To anamnesis and re-lig-eon. Not the thing that the humans do and call this, no, the actual stuff. Remembering. Drawing back into communal unity that which was previously made distinct. Now there are other models of this. The Genji lamp is my favorite. You can find that historically in my videos. It's a very powerful model. But I wanted today to treat a bit of this topic. in my own attempt to remember and to become an amnoetic in my thought, concern, and speech. Yeah. As always, I am grateful for this time together, for your attention, for the fact that our world, fragile and beautiful as she is, still exists. The humans have not yet drawn it into apocalyptic crisis. Or at least, if they have, those catastrophes are hidden in a million different branches that have not yet unified into a world-ending disaster. May your ways and minds be beautiful and blessed. May your dreams be rich and fluorescent. I look forward to learning and exploring together again very soon. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye for now.